What if I told you that everything you believed about medieval battles was untrue? Are you ready for the shocking truth about how Europe's most formidable army was humiliated by a handful of foot soldiers and peasants? For 7 centuries, historians, poets, and artists have glorified knighthood and the power of steel-clad cavalry. But the Battle of the Golden Spurs showed that neither armor nor noble birth can save you when you are faced with determination and the right tactics. On July 11, 1302, a battle took place outside the walls of the town of Courtrai that sealed the fate of the French nobility and changed the art of warfare for centuries to come. Watch the video to the end to find out how the commoners of Flanders, without a single knight in their ranks, forced the elite of the French crown to flee, and why more than 500 golden spurs belonging to the defeated aristocrats were collected on the battlefield after the battle. What if everything you were taught about vassal loyalty is outdated? To begin with, it is extremely important to understand the context of this incredible battle. Flanders, the richest region in Europe at the time, was not just a part of France, but rather the breadbasket and factory of the Middle Ages, based on the wool trade and the production of high-quality fabrics. The Flemish cities, Ghent, Bruges, Ypres, were filled not with poor peasants, but with wealthy burghers, craftsmen, and weavers who knew the value of their money and their freedom. It was economic prosperity that gave them their independence of spirit, which became the main provocation for the French crown. The French king, Philip IV or the Fair, who was constantly in need of money for his ambitious projects, saw Flanders not as a partner, but as a cash cow that needed to be stripped of all autonomy. He appointed his own governors, imposed high taxes, and tried to destroy the self-government of the cities, seeking to turn the wealthy Flemish burghers into submissive subjects. For the freedom-loving Flemings, this was not just a financial humiliation, but an existential one. They were used to managing their own money, laws, and lives. Events came to a head in May 1302, when French troops entered Bruges and behaved like occupiers, treating the local population with contempt, calling them dirty weavers and rabble. The French governor, Jacques de Châtillon, was so confident in his power and impunity that he took no measures to prevent the brewing conflict. This contempt was the last straw and the strongest catalyst. Do you think this combination, highly motivated commoners against self-confident but well-armed knights, was a recipe for inevitable defeat for the French? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Write about it in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation of this and other amazing stories. What if I showed you a time machine that could transport you to a medieval swamp? The territory that the Flemish chose for their battle was absolutely perfect for their defensive tactics. They took a position on the west bank of the Lys River in close proximity to the town of Courtrai, where a powerful fortress had been built in 1297, serving as a reliable rear guard. The terrain itself was a flat, open plain, but with one key difference that turned it into a trap. The Flemings positioned themselves behind a small but deep stream that flowed in front of their formation and a whole system of drainage channels that had been dug to drain the fields around the Lys River. The battlefield thus became a marshy area, crisscrossed by trenches and canals, which made it impossible to carry out a classic frontal attack with heavy cavalry. Their army was formed into a classic but very deep infantry formation, resembling a dense wall of spears and pikes. The first line consisted of militiamen armed with long pikes, which created an impenetrable hedgehog for the cavalry. Behind them were men with hunter-dogs, heavy composite weapons capable of piercing a knight's armor. On the flanks, the Flemish skillfully used natural obstacles, the very stream and canals that converged on the river. This meant that the French cavalry could not bypass the enemy formation from the side and was forced to attack only head-on, along the narrowest and most unfavorable section for themselves. The French commander, Robert Artois, underestimated the importance of these simple but treacherous details of the landscape. Before the battle, the Flemish reinforced their position with additional rows of stakes and small but deep pits camouflaged with turf. These preparations turned the battlefield into a deadly maze where every meter of ground was a potential trap for horses. As a result, the French could only use a small part of their forces in a single attack. The French army, on the other hand, was organized according to the standard feudal scheme. Elite heavy cavalry was located in the center, with lighter cavalry and infantry on the flanks. Robert of Artois, confident and impatient, did not waste time on thorough reconnaissance and ordered an immediate attack to crush the rabble as quickly as possible. He believed that delay would only humiliate his knightly honor, but knowledge of the terrain was only half the battle. Ready to find out how Robert Artois' self-confidence and knightly honor turned his mighty army into a chaotic mess? You've definitely never heard of this unique secret tactical mistake. Despite the fact that the first attacks by the French infantry were unsuccessful, Count Robert of Artois made the most fatal mistake in the history of French knighthood. He misinterpreted the retreat of his infantry. He decided that they were not determined enough rather than that the Flemish position itself was impregnable. His most disastrous decision was to order his own infantry to clear the way for the main attack by heavy cavalry. Robert Artois, driven by knightly pride and contempt for the enemy, exclaimed that the rabble should be punished only by noble swords, not dirty infantry. He believed that only a pure cavalry charge could instantly crush this rebellion of slaves. At the same time, the retreating French infantry units did not have time to completely clear the battlefield. They mixed with the advancing columns of knights, creating unimaginable chaos and congestion in narrow, swampy areas. This further disrupted the order and speed of the cavalry attack, turning it from a striking force into a slow, disorderly mass. Robert Artois, without waiting for a complete reorganization and against the advice of his more cautious officers, personally led the front line of his elite cavalry. His goal was to immediately break through the center of the Flemish formation. This was a pure manifestation of the medieval knightly code, but an absolutely unforgivable tactical blunder. The attack he launched was feeble and chaotic. The knights, forced to wade through mud and ditches, lost their main strength, momentum and speed. Horses stumbled and fell into ditches, and knights, heavy in their armor, found themselves trapped in the mud, unable to maneuver or fight effectively. Thus, the Battle of the Golden Spurs became the first demonstration that well-organized and motivated infantry, supported by the right terrain, could completely destroy even the most formidable cavalry. Like this if you enjoy this unusual story of the triumph of intellect over force. What you are about to learn will change your perception of the power of knighthood. After the first lines of the French cavalry were broken and blocked, Robert Artois, driven to despair and humiliation, gathered the remaining noble knights around him and launched a final desperate attack that became his personal and historical tragedy. By this point, the battle was already lost, but knightly honor demanded death rather than retreat. The knights understood that their charge was unlikely to turn the tide of battle, but the habit of following the code was stronger than common sense. This final attack was a pure act of heroism, but it was meaningless. The knights, fighting their way through the bodies of their fallen comrades, encountered the same impenetrable wall of pikes. Their horses, exhausted and frightened, refused to charge head-on into the steel-bristled formation. Many animals fell before even reaching the Flemish, stumbling on the uneven ground. Exhaustion and terror caused them to lose control, which only added to the chaos of the attack. The horses could not gain speed, and without speed, the knight's strike lost its destructive power. The Flemish understood this perfectly and held their formation together, not allowing the enemy to find the slightest gap. They turned every meter of ground into a trap for heavy cavalry. The French, accustomed to victory thanks to the power of their cavalry, were faced with a reality in which their main weapon had become useless. Robert Artois himself fell in this final assault. He was knocked off his horse, surrounded by Flemish infantrymen, and, despite his cries of surrender, was killed. His death was the inevitable result of a reckless, knightly pursuit of glory that no longer corresponded to the realities of war. The infantrymen believed that such a noble enemy did not deserve mercy after the suffering that France had inflicted on Flanders. The death of their commander finally broke the will of the remaining French troops. Those who witnessed Artois' fall understood that there was no hope left. Panic broke out among the French ranks, spreading rapidly from rider to rider. People who were used to considering themselves the elite suddenly found themselves unable to control the situation. The death of Robert Artois was the signal for the remaining French forces to flee. The cavalry, having lost their leader and frightened by the sight of hundreds of fallen comrades, turned around and tried to leave. But the narrow passage through which they had advanced turned into a deadly trap for them. Thousands of soldiers tried to leave the battlefield at the same time. The jostling and crushing led to new casualties, and many died not at the hands of the enemy, but under the hooves of their own horses. Many knights, realizing that it was almost impossible to get out alive, threw down their weapons to lighten their load. But even this did not help them overcome the chaos that reigned in the narrow section of terrain. Their armor, designed for ceremonial turns and glorious tournaments, proved unsuitable for a chaotic retreat. With each passing second, the French forces lost their ability to resist a fate that had already been decided. Thus, the Battle of the Golden Spurs became the first truly major defeat of knightly cavalry in the Middle Ages, heralding the end of an era dominated by heavy armor and mounted attacks. It was a lesson that new times require new solutions, and that familiar strength can be powerless in the face of changing realities. How did the French king manage to recover from this crushing blow? This defeat was more than just a military disaster. It had profound social, political, and military consequences for all of Europe. France, a centralized monarchy, lost a huge number of its military and political leaders, creating a power vacuum that affected all subsequent wars. The defeat forced King Philip IV the Fair to rethink his approach to warfare and begin searching for new, more effective tactics. He realized that relying solely on knightly cavalry was no longer a guarantee of victory, and that it was necessary to integrate infantry trained in modern combat methods into the army. However, he was not immediately able to assemble a new army for revenge. On the other hand, the victory inspired the Flemish cities and strengthened their autonomy. Although Flanders did not become completely independent, it gained de facto self-government, and the French king had to renounce many of his claims. The burghers and craftsmen proved that their strength lay not only in money, but also in weapons. The new military tactics demonstrated by the Flemish were quickly adopted by other European countries. First of all, the Swiss cantons and English archers began to actively develop their infantry, inspired by the fact that ordinary foot soldiers were capable of stopping heavy cavalry. This battle was an important step in the transition from feudal armies to professional and national ones. It showed that discipline, tactics, and proper infantry armament were much more important than the nobility and heavy armor of knights. Thus, the social role of knighthood began to decline steadily. As a result, the Battle of the Golden Spurs became not just a victory in one battle, but the beginning of a new era in military affairs, where the main factor on the battlefield was not the brilliance of armor, but tactical ingenuity and the strength of the people's militia. What if I showed you a time machine where the simplest weapon becomes the most deadly? This question takes us back to an era when the fate of battles was determined not only by noble birth and expensive armor, but also by the ingenuity of ordinary people. The Flemish militia proved that even the most ordinary townspeople were capable of fighting back against the steel-clad aristocracy. Their success was no accident and was the result of a combination of discipline, tight formation, and special weapons designed specifically for their needs. These weapons were called goedendags, tools that became symbols of the common people's uprising against the privileged class. And it was these weapons that changed the course of history. The success of the Flemish infantry depended largely on their unique weaponry, which unexpectedly proved to be extremely effective against knights. The goedendag became not just a weapon, but the embodiment of popular power based not on wealth, but on practicality. It went down in history as one of the first examples of a weapon created specifically to counter heavy cavalry. Its simplicity and functionality made it ideal for city militias, where each warrior was a craftsman or merchant rather than a professional soldier. Thanks to this, the goedendag became a weapon capable of changing the balance between infantry and cavalry. It was this feature that allowed the Flemish to withstand the onslaught of the elite French knights. The goedendag, which literally means good day, or, according to another version, good dagger, was an interesting combination of a spear and a heavy striking weapon. It had a long wooden shaft capable of withstanding powerful blows and a sharp metal tip that gave it deadly accuracy. Its length of about 1.5 meters allowed the infantryman to remain mobile without losing any significant striking power. In battle, it became an extension of the warrior's arm, allowing him to instantly change his technique depending on the situation. This made the goedendags versatile and extremely convenient in chaotic close combat. It was this adaptability that ensured the weapon's long popularity among townspeople. The choice of tip shape was not accidental, as the spike or pointed rod had to pierce both horse skin and the weak spots of knightly armor. The manufacture of tips required a minimum of metal, which made them affordable for mass production. Flemish blacksmiths could quickly supply hundreds of fighters with them, which gave them a huge advantage over their enemies. The shaft was made of durable wood, which was easy to find in the vicinity of cities. This design ensured high strength and a long service life for the weapon. Therefore, goedendags were often passed from one militiaman to another and served for years. This weapon was particularly effective in two main modes, each of which was important to the tactics of the Flemish. The first mode involved using the goedendag as a short but powerful spear capable of meeting the charge of knightly cavalry. Despite the heavy defeat, King Philip IV could not simply accept the humiliation. The Battle of the Golden Spurs was not just a lost battle, it was a stain on the honor of the entire French crown, and he vowed revenge. However, raising a new army was not as easy as it might seem. The treasury was empty, and the reputation of the knighthood was undermined. The king was forced to resort to unpopular measures, including confiscating the property of Jews and Templars, to raise funds for a new military campaign. This shows how costly the victory of the Flemish weavers was for him. The new army assembled by Philip included not only the remaining knights, but also a large number of mercenary infantry, mainly from Italy and other regions. The king, taught by bitter experience, realized that the infantry was no longer a secondary force. He began to realize the need for structural changes in his army. In 1304, Philip IV undertook a new, more cautious and thoughtful campaign in Flanders. This time, he did not rely solely on a frontal cavalry charge, but used combined tactics, which was a direct result of the lessons learned in 1302. His goal was not so much to destroy as to subdue. A new major battle took place at Mons-Saint-Pével in August 1304. The Flemings again formed a tight defensive line, but the French army was better prepared. The French attacked more cautiously, using their infantry and Genoese crossbowmen to wear down the enemy. The battle was fierce, but this time it did not end in a complete defeat for the French. Although the Flemings once again showed incredible tenacity, the French advantage in numbers and more sophisticated tactics, as well as the Flemings' fatigue and lack of resources, made themselves felt. The Battle of the Golden Spurs was a turning point that accelerated profound social changes throughout Europe. It convincingly demonstrated that military power no longer relied solely on the prestige of the knightly class. Tactical flexibility, collective discipline, full motivation of the troops, and competent organization became decisive factors. It was a demonstration that military superiority could come not from title, but from skill. Until 1302, knighthood was considered an unshakable force, and their monopoly on warfare was almost sacred. For years, the French nobility held fast to the belief that no militia could withstand steel-clad cavalry. After Cortés, this belief collapsed. For the first time in centuries, it turned out that infantry formations, if well-trained, disciplined, and equipped with suitable weapons, were capable not only of resisting knights, but also of crushing them. Rulers gradually began to reevaluate the role of the army, relying on townspeople, mercenaries, and professional infantry, whose actions could be controlled much better than those of hot-headed feudal lords. A new social class emerged on the political horizon: wealthy townspeople who could influence power not only economically, but also militarily. Burghers, craftsmen, and trade corporations showed that their wealth and collective organization could be transformed into combat-ready armies. This strengthened the political influence of cities, accelerated the development of urban self-government, and led to a gradual restriction of the privileges of the old feudal class. In France, the defeat at Courtrai dealt a huge blow to the aristocracy. The death of so many knights led to a redistribution of landholdings and gave the king a chance to put his supporters in key positions. This became an impetus for further centralization of power, although it was accompanied by crises, rebellions, and a redistribution of political influence. Historians believe that the Battle of the Golden Spurs was one of the first signs of the changes that would later lead to the 100 Years' War. English monarchs carefully analyzed the French defeat and concluded that heavy cavalry no longer guaranteed victory. As a result, a new, more flexible tactical model was created, based on longbowmen and dismounted infantry. This concept, perfected to perfection, brought the English stunning successes at Crécy and Poitiers, where French knights once again proved powerless against organized and well-protected infantry. The Battle of the Golden Spurs instantly became a legend, a symbol of popular heroism and the victory of justice over arrogance. It was celebrated in numerous Flemish chronicles and ballads, which were distributed among the common people. The very idea that dirty weavers could destroy the cream of French knighthood was incredibly inspiring to all the oppressed and downtrodden classes of European society. The Flemish showed that an organized militia could be stronger than a professional army. Unlike many other medieval battles, the Battle of the Golden Spurs was not simply a conflict between two kings. It was a battle for economic rights, self-government, and dignity, which made it unique in its era. The names of militia leaders, such as Peter Koning, a simple weaver, became folk heroes. His example showed that leadership could be based not on pedigree, but on talent and dedication to a common cause. Collecting gold spurs from the battlefield became not just a trophy, but a powerful propaganda gesture. These spurs were displayed as evidence of the defeat of the aristocracy, reminding everyone of what had happened at Courtrai. The lessons taught by the Flemish weavers remain surprisingly relevant even in the age of drones, satellite reconnaissance, and precision weapons, reminding us that the fundamental principles of tactics remain largely unchanged. The Battle of the Golden Spurs became a classic example of asymmetric warfare, where a low-tech but disciplined force managed to break the elite of one of Europe's strongest states. Asymmetric warfare, in which the weaker side uses the terrain, knowledge of the landscape, its own mobility, and atypical weapons, was first demonstrated with such brilliant clarity at Courtrai. The Flemings showed that superiority is not determined by metal and horses, but by the ability to impose one's own rules on the enemy. The main lesson of the battle was the preparation of the battlefield. What seemed to the French to be an ordinary meadow, the Flemish turned into a deadly trap, a network of canals, deep ditches, and stakes. This inconspicuous engineering deprived the cavalry of its main advantage, speed and striking power. Thus, the Flemish proved that the choice of position and competent engineering preparation can decide the outcome of a battle faster than swords and spears. Motivation proved to be an equally important factor. The Flemish, defending their cities, families, trading privileges, and freedoms, had a clear and personal goal. The French knights went into battle driven by honor, tradition, and a desire to punish the rebellious townspeople. The difference in motivation manifested itself in resilience. The Flemish fought fiercely and methodically, while the knights, confident of an easy victory, were unable to regroup when faced with unexpected resistance. The battle clearly showed that even the most expensive and technologically advanced military systems, heavy knightly cavalry, the pride of the French nobility, could be stopped with simple but specialized weapons. The goedendags, a crude peasant pole weapon, proved deadly against knights stuck in the mud and weighed down by their own armor. Simplicity defeated luxury. It also highlighted the danger of overconfidence. Robert Artois, confident that the townspeople would falter at the sight of the knightly lava, underestimated both their training and their determination. His mistake cost him not only his life, it resulted in the mass destruction of the French elite, becoming a lesson for several generations of commanders. We can see that the Battle of the Golden Spurs in 1302 was not just a victory in a single battle, but a real revolution in military affairs and the social structure of Europe. The Flemish weavers and craftsmen not only avenged their humiliation, but also taught the proud knights a lesson, showing that the era in which only armor and horses ruled was coming to an end. This victory became a monument to the resilience of the people and tactical genius. They proved that an organized people fighting for their freedom could overcome even the most powerful armies through ingenuity and strength of spirit. Their hammers and spears proved stronger than the best French swords and armor. It was a victory that opened the door to a new, more rational, infantry-oriented military art. Which of the subsequent great battles where infantry once again humiliated cavalry? For example, Crécy or Agincourt. Do you find most interesting for the next video? Write your opinion and suggest topics for future videos in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the continuation of this exciting series.